Welcome to the Wellness Lab. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. And just to start things off here, for listeners who maybe don't know a bit of your background, could you introduce just some of the student communities, clubs that you're involved in?
Okay. So, hi, my name is Fatima. I'm a second year psychology and neuroscience student at the University of Toronto. I'm in a multitude of organizations. Like Chemist Engage, I volunteer there. I'm part of the Neuroscience Foundation. I am in EMH, which is Evolve Your Mental Health, where we talk about student mental health. I'm in PNDA as a media producer. That's the Psychology and Neuroscience Departmental Association. I'm in TEDx, bunch of things.
Mm.
And for fun, I like to do Taekwondo.
Just for the audience who might not know, we do go to the same school, same campus, a couple of the different clubs that we're both a part of, the Psychological Neuroscience Departmental Association being one of them. So I just wanted to open up and ask you here. So with your involvement in all these student communities at such a competitive, prestigious school like U of T, what do you notice about student mental health?
I feel like it can go both ways. I feel like definitely like sometimes it gets to you. You see so many people doing so well, and it can kind of feel like you're falling behind, and that can kind of hurt sometimes. It's like, oh, everyone's doing this, and I feel like I'm falling behind. But it can also like motivate you.
Hmm.
A lot of the time, like for me personally, like when I see my friends doing well, it motivates me to do well, and like we help each other, and in that sense, it's fun. But it's a very like thin line between
Hmm.
comparing yourself to others and also being motivated by others.
Yeah, for sure. And then that experience as well. Could you go into a bit of how that manifests or how that might come together when you become overworked in environments like U of T?
When you become overworked in environments like U of T, like, could you elaborate a little more on the question?
Well, you said that there was all this stuff and you might be falling behind and maybe burnout starts to set in. And why do you think that might happen or be so commonplace in these kinds of settings?
It's common because so many people, like U of T in specific, it's a really competitive and academic school. And when we see so many people, doing so well, it's common for us to feel like we're behind. And then there are also some neuroscientific and psychological reasons behind it. So I can go a little bit into that if that's what we
Yeah,
want to talk
that'd
about.
be great.
Okay. So I know for one, we can talk about the prefrontal cortex and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Those areas are affected by the stress we get, especially in terms of burnout. So that brings difficulty in like focusing, and also it makes us harder to manage our emotions. And then our amygdala activity spikes, and when our amygdala activity spikes, we get more stressed and we get more overwhelmed. And then with chronic stress, that disrupts our HPA. So that's our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And when that's disrupted, we tend to get more high cortisol, and that can lead to us being more tired or moody. And then with our insula as well, like it's affected, and then we have disruptions with our emotional awareness, and we can also feel numb and disattached from people. And then our hippocampus, like with prolonged stress, it can also shrink. I will also like give you the source for everything. I want to like put it out there. Like this is the correlational
Hmm.
finding. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
for
our
sure.
hippocampus, it also like shrinks and we get more forgetful with more stress. And that's a lot of what can happen. And then psychologically, like we emotionally are like exhausted, right? Like
Yeah.
emotionally, like we get so drained by just seeing other people and then like putting in so much work and then still feeling like we're not enough. And that can reduce our performance in academics, in social life, everything. It just makes us feel
Yeah.
very disassociated. And there's so much more things, but you know,
And I think it's interesting because for people uh like me, like yourself, who know a bit about psychology, neuroscience,
mhm,
is we have the insight to be able to say when we're feeling stressed, being able to label parts of the brain and just knowing that baseline of information of being able to say, no wonder I'm tired. The brain takes up X% of the body's oxygen and nutrients to be because it's so high working and da 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 da. For those of for individuals who aren't as educated in that space, why do you think it's valuable to know about what is going on in the brain? And in the mind? Because I think a lot of people hear, ventromedial prefrontal cortex and they just check out. But
Yeah.
why do you think that's important?
I think it's important because it tells us more about us. I think so a really big reason I went into like psychology, neuroscience is because I wanted to know more about how other people act and behave and also what is actually causing it, right? And I think it's important because it can help us self acknowledge and label things that are happening. Sometimes we don't know how we feel or why we feel the way we feel, but like learning more about these things they can help you cope in a sense, right? Like, hey, like I'm feeling like this because this happened to me. And that's like a totally valid thing. Like that's a totally valid feeling to have.
And I just want to circle back to something you said at the beginning, just a few minutes ago when we were talking, is the two ways it can go with all the pressures of university. So we've talked a bit about the pressure and the maybe the self comparison and the getting tired, but the motivating aspect of it. Can you explain how someone might be able to go on that route mentally and say, with all these pressures and say, okay, I can either get stressed out and tired of it about this, or I can use it as a motivator. How might someone direct themselves that direction?
So I think it's a process, right? It's not linear. Sometimes, like even me, like sometimes as much as I love like getting motivated by people, there are some times where I open LinkedIn and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so behind. But taking into consideration, you need to validate like what you're doing, right? Like you need to be acknowledging like, hey, like I am doing so much or I'm doing the amount that I can do at the moment. And
Hmm.
really saying like, "Hey, like this person is just like me. We're all humans at the end of the day, right?" And
Yeah.
taking it and it's again, it's a process, it's a thought process. You need to work on it, like actively think about like, "Hey, like I want this to be a motivation." So let's say my friend, she got into a really like prestigious lab and I'm like, "Hey, like I'm just like this person. Like we share
Hmm.
jokes, we share the same personality." And that's really motivating because if they can do it, then we can also do it, right?
Yeah.
And again, like it's not linear. It's everyone feels like everyone feels like they need to compare themselves. But just taking into account like, hey, this person can do it, so can I. And also like these people are super like supportive as well. Like if you talk to these people who you might be comparing yourself to, they're so sweet. And they genuinely, from my experience, they genuinely want to help you and students helping each other is such a positive thing, and that can motivate you as well.
And since you're involved in all these different clubs, I'm curious about your insight on this. How do you think those university communities, academic communities help protect you from that or help alleviate maybe the negative mental health effects that competitive academia and being a young person in in the
I think it's very nice. Like being in a club helps alleviate in the sense like there are students just like you. And especially because like me, like in first year when I joined a club, there were fourth years, third year. These people have experience and you talk to them about it and they teach you about like things that work for them, things that may have not worked for them. And they give you a lot of insight into how university is like. They recommend you courses, tell you about props that you should not take whatsoever. And they give you study tips and they also give you like from my experience, they just give you a lot of sources to, better yourself with. And like they tell you about different opportunities and scholarships and they're super supportive and just socializing with them can always help make your day better.
I want to get into your experience a little bit now as well.
Mhm.
How has being involved in those communities shaped your experience in university thus far?
I think it's shaped it amazing. So many of my friends, I've made so many friends from joining clubs, and I feel like joining clubs is a great way to build your experience. And it's a great way to update your LinkedIn and get so many more opportunities from that, right? Like, so I've made so many like friends and I've had like so many experiences which I can list off in my resume. And recruiters really like to see that. And I've gotten different opportunities from different organizations reaching out saying, "Hey, like I love this, like that you did this. Like, do you want to work with us?" Like it's really helpful. And it does depend on the club itself. I've had my fair share of clubs where some clubs it can get negative as well. Like
Hmm.
people not communicating properly or just like it's mostly just miscommunication, but, taking a step back and saying, like, "Is this club meant for me? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing for me? Is it helping me for future, or is it, like, taking a toll on my mental health and I have to just leave?" Like, it goes both ways.
Yeah, because there's different routes with that. So when you're in a positive environment with healthy people who wanna uplift each other, it'll push you in that direction, and I did wanna touch on this, and this is, something I think people need to recognize is that there are environments similarly where people are comparing themselves to others very often, and
Yeah.
that can go the other way. Do you think that happens?
100% it happens. I don't know how often, because I can't read people's brains, but I feel like when discussing this with my friends, I realize there is comparison, 100%. Like, even I do it. Like, someone from my club got this amazing internship, and I'm like, "Hey, like, I wish I could do that." But at the end of the day, it's really like what you're doing for yourself, right? You need to do your best to take the positives out of it. The negatives, with everything, negatives happen, and you need to try your best to take more positives with it. And again, like, talk to the people, they're sweethearts, like, they're gonna be nice about it, and they're gonna help you with it.
Is there advice you would give to someone who maybe is listening and thinks they wanna join a club in university, they wanna join some kind of student community, they feel scared, intimidated, whatever it may be? What advice would you give that person?
I would say you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So, the worst thing that could really happen if you apply to a club is, like, they reject you, like, that's life,
Mhm.
like, everyone experiences rejection, and you need to really think about how can this club help me, like, what can I gain from this? There's so much social exposure, there's so much experience that you can gain, and
Mhm.
that's really, like, what you need to think about. And yeah, it's tough, like, sometimes it's, like, really intimidating because a lot of the clubs, they do have a competitive process, like, getting into the club itself. But again, like, the worst that can happen, it's like you don't get into it.
And then I think there's that other excuse as well that people in that situation might have is they say, well, with a full course load and maybe all other commitments they have, they might not think they have the time to engage in
Mm,
clubs and student
mm.
communities and have, a rich social life on top of that. What advice would you give someone who's maybe in that situation and is looking for a way to try and find time for that?
I think scheduling a lot of, like, when you need to do your coursework, when you want to do social, when you want to have time for yourself, for your mental health, I think that's really helpful. I could not live without my schedules. I have a schedule for it. Like, I schedule out time for my mental health. I schedule out days where I want to socialize with people, for clubs, for everything. I think it's super important. And it's also like, personally what you can pick on, right? Like, you shouldn't go into like 50 clubs if like this academic semester is going to be tough. You need to like really hone in on what your priorities are and focus on that. It's quality over quantity always.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to select certain communities, because that is something you have to ease into if you're nervous as well, is being able to say, well, I'm not going to join, all these different clubs and apply to everything. Maybe I'll start with this, see how I like it. And if that's a success, move on to this, take it in stages and
Yeah.
try and learn it because it's a skill.
Yeah. And I will say, like, in your first year, see, like, as a recommendation, this is what I did. I joined as many clubs as I could, and I saw, like, how much the workload actually was because I feel like on the applications, they do, like, kind of exaggerate the workload a little bit. And you can see, like, how much work they're actually giving you. And then in second year, take the clubs that you really like and do those. And, you can manage your time.
I've heard you mention, just kind of throwing yourself into these different clubs and mention scheduling as well. Are there any strategies so I know those are strategies you've used, but are there ones that you've maybe learned from your peers as a result of being involved in these clubs that you would recommend to people?
I would say again, like the majority of people I've talked to are like scheduling is super important and
Hmm.
also making sure you don't get burned out. And that in itself is really difficult, especially as a uni student, scheduling time for your mental health, scheduling days off, scheduling days to do the things you genuinely like to do as a passion and not for work, doing things that make you happy. I think that's also something that helps a lot of people because when you're happier, you do better work.
And then I wanted to, I touch on that as well because I think that's a situation a lot of people would be listening for when you've hit that point of burnout. Maybe someone who's a bit further into their university experience, who's maybe not using the best, knows they haven't been using the best strategies thus far, and they've hit this point of burnout. What would you recommend they do to maybe bounce back or recover from that, or try and maybe change their approach?
It definitely depends on what point of the semester you're in, but exam season, there's not too much you can do. Obviously, like you can take care of your mental health, take a day off. Even just one day helps so much. But let's say midterms or like assignments are due or assignments are piling up. I would always talk to my professors about it. I had this assignment due and I really genuinely thought I could finish it in time and that I didn't need an extension because I've never asked for an extension before. And I was like, I don't need it. I can finish it. But then midnight hits and I'm like, I am not even like halfway done this assignment. And I emailed my prof. I was really upset because I've never had an assignment late. And he was so sweet about it. He was so understanding about it. And I think that's generally, from my experience, what professors tend to be like. Obviously, they can't give you an extension for an exam, but with things like assignments, I think they generally tend to be really sweet and understanding about it. Like he had a whole check-in meeting with me. He's like, "Is everything okay? Like, how can I help you?" And it was super sweet. And I felt so bad because he was emphasizing the whole semester how tell me beforehand. Even after I told him after, he was so supportive. And there's always academic resources at university. And also you can get tutoring, get friends for help, and scheduling time for your mental health. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but it's really, really so
Mhm.
important
And
to
if
like make sure you're doing okay.
I feel like that's a common mindset as well, is people in university who maybe reject help or just don't think to ask, for
Yeah.
things like extensions or don't think to do that. In your experience, what goes into or what might cause that mindset of, "Oh, I need to do this by myself?"
I feel like this stemmed from me in like just being the oldest of my family. And also in high school, it was a really grind mindset where no one would help each other with notes. No one would do this. No, and the teachers too, they wouldn't be as understanding. They would be really strict with deadlines. And I feel like that can kind of manifest into university as well. You can feel all alone, all by yourself, like hyper independent. I feel like everyone's against you, especially because UST tends to be a competitive school. It can always feel like no one's here to help me. As I've learned, like I learned this semester that they're so sweet. They generally do want to help, and they'll never know if you don't ask. The thing is, like, you can go through the worst experience of your entire life, but if you don't communicate that with other people, then how are they supposed to know, and how are they supposed to help you? So it's always so important to ask.
Yeah, of course. And then just asking for help, and that kind of goes back to the student communities as well, because you have this group of people where you can rely on them and support them. How would you, because I noticed this as well, that you said there were some clubs in the first year that you weren't as thrilled about, and you then proceeded and gone with the ones you were happy about. How would someone identify a healthy or an unhealthy group of people in university?
I think it's really dependent on how you're feeling after doing work for this club. Do you feel excited and motivated and happy and feel passionate about this club? Or does it feel like a negative environment? Do you feel drained after working for this club? And obviously, you feel drained after doing a lot of work for anything. But
Mhm.
in terms of like, do you find yourself more on the happy end of when you're interacting with this club, or do you find yourself like, I don't like this. Like, I feel mentally exhausted after working with this club or interacting with these people.
Mhm.
That can give you a pretty good sense of like whether this club is for you or not.
Yeah, to me, it just sounds like if it feels like a chore, that's not something you go through with, because even though something might be difficult or challenging, because trying to find a group of people in university is a big challenge and that can be really
Yeah,
intimidating. But if it feels like a chore to do, it's probably not the route. But even if it's challenging, if it fulfills you in some way, then that's the way to go.
100%.
And then on the topic of good and bad communities, there is one last thing I wanted to touch on here. So, a bit of a big topic, but I thought a big theme of this as well, and this space is social media, because in student communities that then they're all present online now, and then
Mm.
there's also they're present on Instagram, and then there's academic and workforce platforms like LinkedIn that can be very stressful. How do you think that social media plays a role in this in student mental health and that kind of comparison?
I think this really well like relates to what we were discussing in the beginning. It
Hmm.
can go both it can go both ways. Like it can be a lot of the time a really positive and motivating thing to see people doing so well, and it motivates you to do better as well. Definitely I feel like coming here and seeing all these people on social media, it makes me want to do more as well. But it can also make you feel terrible about yourself. Like this person is socializing with everyone, they're going out, they're having fun, they're getting all these experiences, they're working, they're in labs, or they have this internship, they're doing research, they're in so many clubs, and that can be very demotivating. It can be like, why am I not doing all that? Like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I do that? And then it's again like really important to have a mental check and be like, hey, like, how is this making me feel? And like sometimes it's good to take a break from social media if it's having an impact on your mental health, or just unfollow the people who are, making you feel like, hey, like I'm not enough. Because a lot of the time it's just very saddening and it can hurt. But for me personally, like I love seeing people like enjoying themselves and having fun. And it's really motivating. It's really motivating for me to see people happy and it makes me excited to do like all these things. And I think a great way to join up with social media, like they post a lot of stuff on social media on how you can get involved, whether it's volunteering or like just stop in. And I think those are pretty cool too. But again, it's like a really thin line between amazing and it can also be very draining.
What do you think it is about having that community of motivators that makes the mental health of it all so much more manageable? Because you're having all these people motivate you, and even beyond that, you just have someone to. I think another big part of it, beyond the motivation, is having someone to just share these challenges with.
Mhm.
And you just walk out of that exam and you go, man, that was tough. And just being able to share that experience with someone, do you think that's valuable as well?
I think it's super valuable. Like the thing is, if you don't talk to people, it's gonna fill up in your mind and you're gonna overthink about it. Like, hey, like I didn't do well on that exam. Like I bet other people did amazing. And then you talk to your friend like, oh, I also flunked that exam. And it's like, okay, I don't feel as bad about myself. It's like it's it's a really good relationship where you can share when you can share these types of things with your friends, and it can also like motivate you to do better. Like, hey, like we might have not done too well on this midterm, but we're gonna lock in for finals, and it's a really good way to take it, Like, if you're internalizing it like, "Hey, I did terrible, I'm a failure," and then you're like, "What's even the point of studying for the final exam?" Because 'Cause I've had friends who have felt that way, and when we shared and we discussed these things, we felt like these friends felt much better about themselves. And, like, communicating everything and even talking with their family, like, I know when I was really stressed during midterms, my family, they were so sweet. They would cut me fruit, they came and they would just take care of me and they would hug me and make me feel like everything was okay. And this can be with friends, with club members, community. It just makes you feel so much better when you know someone, had your back. And I'm getting emotional because I literally started crying because it was so sweet that my parents were like taking so much care of me and I'm so grateful for that. I think everyone should have that type of person to go to when they're feeling upset or, drained.
I actually had someone I knew in the mental health space tell me
Mm.
that working like this or having a life like that where you aren't venting to the people who care about you and the people around you is like drinking soda day after day and trying not to burp. And you need that person around you to just let that out of your body and just beyond the motivation and support, just someone to vent to and just get it out of your system. That's such a that's such a crutch, and it's a great thing to have in those
Yeah.
situations.
It's like I think another thing is when you can vent to these people, it creates a sort of feeling like they care and you care. So when you're venting to them. You feel loved and appreciated and heard. And then when you do that for other people, they also feel like that. And I feel like that builds such a closer connection instead of just bottling everything up inside and then blowing up like a volcano.
So, last thing I want to get out before we end off today is for someone who is listening to this episode because they may be feeling overwhelmed or isolated in university, is there a step that you would recommend they take today to improve their mental health?
I think they should always like journal down how they're feeling. I feel like writing everything down and actually seeing what you're thinking, because everything in your mind is all jumbled up, right? There's so many things going on in your mind. Actually writing down, seeing what's making you feel this way and how you're actually feeling really helps like give you a starting point of what can I do to make this better. So like let's say I'm feeling really stressed about this assignment. Okay, I'm feeling really stressed about this assignment. Why am I feeling so stressed about this assignment? Then you write that down and you're like, what can I do to make it feel better? Like to make myself feel better. And then you write that down as well. And if you can do it, that's great. You do it, you feel better. If you can't do it, it's out of your control. You need to live with it. And it's out of your control. So you just let it be. And you shouldn't stress about things that are.
Okay. So I think that's all I wanted to touch on today. I think we got some good information together. I that was a great time. I really enjoyed talking about student mental health, and it was great to hear your insight.
It was great talking to you as well. I had a really fun like experience. It was so nice talking to you.
Thanks so much. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.